All right, so here are some continued notes on climate literacy. And these first couple slides are more to give you some general information about why we know that climate science is not just a political issue. Yes, we have to decide as a society how to respond to the information today, and that can be based on politics, but the actual reality of climate change and how the physics of our atmosphere works, that's not a political issue. That's just physics, chemistry, and so forth. So I'm not going to expect a lot of, or don't expect a lot of questions on these folks, but just understand that we have known about the physics of climate change for a long time. So a picture of Joseph Fourier. And back in 1824, Fourier, as a mathematician, was calculating Earth's average temperature. And analysis of solar radiation, so incoming solar radiation, and then heat radiated out, he concluded that Earth should be a frozen sphere. But obviously it wasn't. So he envisioned that what could explain that was that perhaps Earth's atmosphere acted like a greenhouse. And so there's kind of the nugget of an idea for a greenhouse effect. Claude Poirier in 1827, a French physicist, did some follow-up work to Fourier. And he speculated that some gases in the atmosphere, carbon dioxide and water vapor, could explain why Earth wasn't a frozen sphere. It's a possible explanation, possible theory to explain. These folks are more in the experimental realm. Svante Arrhenius, the guy with the mustache up on the right, 1896, he was wondering what caused the ice ages. And he figured the culprit might be related to carbon dioxide. Like changes in carbon dioxide could lead to this if we reduce them. He figured with the current rate of coal burning, Sweden would be balmy in 3,000 years. So he understood that adding CO2 to the atmosphere would warm it. Before Arrhenius was talking about a warming Earth with fossil fuel activity, John Tyndall, an Irish physicist, 1859, the guy with the crazy beard here, he developed a device to actually measure the heat absorption capacity of different gases. All right, so Tyndall measured the absorption capacity of different gases, heat absorption capacity, including carbon dioxide. And he gave the first quantitative evidence to support the greenhouse effect. Maybe it happened before that, in 1856. Eunice Foote, an American scientist, working in conjunction with her husband, they had their own experiments that they did on their just sort of as a hobby, and she published an article describing what Tyndall wrote 3 years later, but she did it 3 years previous, so maybe she should be getting credit. And then Guy Callender in 1938, he gave the first statistics that our climate was actually getting warmer. So 3 older white guys, and maybe we need to include in history books Eunice Foote for her contributions too. But ultimately, we've known about this for centuries. All right, so we get to the idea of what is scientific consensus. What does it mean that scientists have a consensus? It means that they're in large agreement for. So a majority of scientists working on climate research agree on the following. Climate change is occurring, and the change comes from human activity, burning of fossil fuels. A historian of scientific research, Naomi Oreskes, in 2004, wrote up an analysis of 10 years of scientific research, and in 928 peer-reviewed articles relating to climate, 0 of those articles rejected the consensus view. So the evidence in scientific research is all moving forward with this understanding, a common understanding about how climate works and how climate is changing. As such, there was a move to form a group internationally, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and started in 1988, starting with a Union of Concerned Climate Scientists, and bringing in international organizations. 194 member nations wanted to join this group, and ultimately they come up with 2 reports per decade. So every 5 years they come out with a new look at what is the climate data showing us. And 831 authors are contributing to this report, and they all have to agree. So whatever is being reported, there has to be a consensus agreement on what is published. And 2 decades of evidence and growing scientific support, we are learning more and more and showing with a higher probability that climate change is occurring and it is human caused. So we already talked in class about the troposphere, so we're going to skip ahead here. So we'll continue on and just try to review some key concepts related to climate science. One of those is one we've mentioned, the greenhouse effect. It's from greenhouse gases, and we talk heavily about carbon dioxide because it's the one we have the strongest impact on and control the most, or have most control over. But water, vapor, methane, CH4, and nitrous oxides also act as greenhouse gases. And there are others, but these are just a handful. So how does it work? Well, light energy comes in from the sun into Earth's atmosphere. And it comes in short wavelengths because light energy moves in short wavelengths. But when light energy is absorbed by the Earth's surface, that converts the energy into heat energy. Well, heat wavelengths are long wavelengths, and so they don't leave as quickly as they came in. So heat leaves with resistance. It warms the Earth, so water is liquid and can sustain life. So the greenhouse effect is why Earth isn't a frozen sphere. And so the natural greenhouse effect is vital for life. And what we're saying when we talk about climate change is we have a human enhanced greenhouse effect. We're making it stronger, which is warming the Earth, and that's putting pressure on the climate system, and ultimately climate change is occurring. So Earth has an energy budget. We get so much energy from the sun annually. So we get a steady flow of solar energy in. 30% of it is reflected by light surfaces like polar ice and snow. 23% of it is absorbed by the atmosphere, so even the clouds in the atmosphere can help some clouds can do some of that albedo reflecting, but 23%, is absorbed by the atmosphere directly. So the greenhouse gases can absorb that solar energy as well. There's little particles in the air, and they're going to absorb some of that. 47% is absorbed by the Earth's surface, supporting life. So if the rate of entering and leaving is constant, temperature of Earth is stable, should be stable. But we're adding more greenhouse gases, which means we slow the rate of heat leaving, and that's going to have a warming effect. We talked already about these two variables, carbon dioxide and temperature, being coupled or linked or handcuffed. As one goes up, the other goes up. As one goes down, the other goes down. And so our records, looking in ice core data, reveal this very lockstep pattern between these two variables. So if we add greenhouse gases, that means more atmospheric absorption, that means global warming. It's basic physics. Decreased albedo, reflection of white surfaces, the more light is absorbed. So if we are getting rid of our white surfaces, our polar ice, more light absorption means warming. So that's amplifying the warming effect. They call it a positive feedback loop. We also read in Weather Makers about sources and sinks. So a source is something that emits carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. So fossil fuels, cement production are two major contributors to carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Land use changes. So when we clear cut a forest and use that land differently, that deforestation also is going to cause an emission of CO2 to the atmosphere. So those would be sources. But even respiration, we breathe out carbon dioxide. Or when we burn a campfire, we are emitters of CO2. We are sources. Sinks, on the other hand, absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Photosynthesis is a huge sink by absorbing carbon dioxide to make plant tissue. And oceans. Remember, 50 to 1 carbon dioxide absorbed or concentration in oceans versus the atmosphere. Our next set of slides and notes will be about inferring about Earth's past, sediment, ice, and tree ring data. But that'll be for another time.